I was sexually assaulted almost 7 years ago. Why didn't I report it? Hashtag whyididn'treport is a tag that's been going around the internet in the wake of the allegations against Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh in an attempt to raise awareness why people do not report what has happened to them, oftentimes for years, sometimes for decades, and sometimes never. So why didn't I report what happened to me? Actually, I did. This is what happened. Hey guys, it's Jo and welcome back to Trauma Talk. I wanted to tell you a little bit today about the process of me reporting what happened to me, what happened in the aftermath, how I felt about that, and why people choose not to report, and why I honestly understand that as someone who did choose to report. It took me 2 weeks to decide to report what happened to me. Like I said, it happened about 7 years ago, and I knew the person who raped me. It was not the first time it happened. I was in a relationship with him. It was an abusive relationship since it started. I could not see that. I did not let myself see that. He was extremely manipulative and good at what he did. He was emotionally and physically and spiritually and sexually abusive and had me under his thumb since the beginning. And it took me a year of things getting worse and worse and worse to finally figure out, oh my God, this is the situation I'm in. This is dangerous. This is bad. I am getting hurt. I have to get out of this. And it took a really bad instance for me to realize what was happening. And so in October of 2011, I exited that relationship thinking everything was my fault, but I couldn't stay. That was my mindset when I left that relationship. I had no intention of reporting him to the police at all. It took me 2 weeks. During that 2 weeks, all I could think was, I can't ruin his life. I'm not going to ruin his life, because in my mind, I held the cards to be able to say something. And if I said, this man raped me, this man did something to me, his life would go up in smoke, his life would go up in flames, and I could not imagine doing that to someone. Even though he had done unspeakable, horrific things to me, I could not imagine doing something like that to him, because I did love him, I did care about him, even though he'd done these things to me. After 2 weeks, I felt like I had to say something. I didn't understand the process of reporting. I had never really been a part of that world at all. I came from a very naive background, and I did go to the police because I felt like it was the right thing to do. When I did that, it was a pretty traumatic experience. People have had much worse experiences than I have, but mine was not a good one. They did take my report. The detective who I spoke with was not respectful. He did not care to listen. He seemed like he was in a rush and had better things to do. He asked me questions that made it seem like it was my fault. He told me that I was lucky that it wasn't worse, that I was lucky that I wasn't dead, that I was lucky that I was dating him, that scrutinized the fact that, but I mean, you were dating him, right? So you had slept together before, right? And I was like, well, never like consensually, because I didn't ever actually want to do that. And he made it clear that that's ridiculous and relationships like that don't exist. But he would look into it. And so he looked into it, but he didn't look into it for 3 weeks because he forgot to file my report. This is a true story. He went on vacation for 3 weeks and forgot to do anything with it. Because I called and I was like, what is going on? Like, I haven't heard anything. They're like, oh, that guy's actually on vacation and we don't have a record of what you're talking about. So I waited until he came back. Then the process actually started, and it took about 3 months for them to come back and tell me that they weren't going to take my case. And this is a quote from the DA, because I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, and I wanted to find out, like, why aren't you going to take this? Because by this point, I had found out that he was a registered sex offender at the time that he had done everything he did to me, that he had 2 convictions of sexual assault, and I found this out later, but he'd also had 2 convictions of domestic violence, and he also had 5 restraining orders against him. So that was like 4 things against him. This was a very dangerous person who had a pattern of violent behavior. They knew this. They obviously had all this information, and they weren't going to take my case. They weren't taking me seriously at all. And so I pushed and I pushed and I pushed until I eventually spoke to the DA. It was a pretty small county. And what she told me is, she said, I'm sorry, we're not taking your case, but honestly, it doesn't look good. You guys were dating, and I quote, juries don't take women seriously in these cases anyways. Women often lie, so I'm sorry, we can't do anything about this. And that was really hard to digest. It was really hard to deal with. I am glad that I went forward. I'm glad that I told my story, simply because at the end of the day, I know that I can tell myself I did everything that I could. That is not everyone's story. That is not right for everyone to do. I am not promoting that everyone tell the police what happened necessarily because it's not a great experience. And I experienced a lot of shame and a lot of guilt because I went forward, because I told them, because I went to people who were in position of power, and because previously I thought, if I tell what has happened to me, I'm going to ruin this man's life. Like, I hold so much power and I don't want to hurt anyone, but I want to do the right thing. And when I went forward, I realized, oh my God, I actually don't have any power. Like, I don't have anything. Someone can do whatever they want to me, and I don't have anything. My words mean nothing. And I understand, like, I didn't go to the hospital and get a rape kit right when it happened, so these cases are very difficult to prove. With that being said, it's also not difficult not to shame people. It's not difficult not to ask people stupid questions and tell people this stuff doesn't happen in relationships, and not to ask people questions not just about what they're wearing for police report reasons, but to insinuate that what they were wearing was the wrong thing, which did happen when I was in that police room. One thing people don't realize happens when you report is that you are acknowledging what happened to you. Oftentimes, the vast majority of the time, people go into denial about being sexually assaulted, being raped, being molested, something horrible, something unspeakable happening to them. And when you go to the police, when you go to the authorities and you say, this happened to me, and you tell them in excruciating detail precisely what that is, you can't deny it to yourself anymore very easily. You are suddenly the person who that happened to, and it is not simple to write it off in your head anymore and pretend like it didn't happen. I didn't realize the ripple effect that would take place in my personal life when I came forward about this. That is another reason why people do not come forward with this information, because what can happen in your personal life is heartbreaking. People don't know what to do with you when you're hurt like this. People don't know what to say to you. People don't know how to respond. They don't know how to help. And so oftentimes they hurt a lot more than they help. And your personal life can fall apart. Your friendships, your relationships, family member relationships just break apart because people tell you to get over it. People tell you that it was your fault. People tell you to take responsibility. People tell you all kinds of things, and it hurts, and you don't know what to do with it. And it takes years and years to heal from, and it's a long process. And if you come forward, if you report it, if you make it known, if you make a statement, if you stand on that, suddenly you have to take all of that. You have to suddenly be willing to deal with shame and blame and guilt and accept that this thing actually happened. And sometimes I still don't accept that it happens. Sometimes I still don't accept that that really happened to me. Sometimes I still feel like I'm trying to live in denial, except that I can't, because I know that it really did. But coming forward is not like saying that someone broke into your house. When your body becomes a crime scene, when someone literally took control over your physical being, that's a feeling that if you have not experienced it, I truly hope you never have to. But it's something that can't be described in words. It's horrific. You don't want to think about it. You don't want to relive it. You want to pretend it never happened. And if you come forward and say it happened, that's not something you can take back, and most people want to live like it never happened. The problem is, if you live in denial, that leads to really damaging things in your personal life. And so I encourage people to tell their stories in safe ways, but our justice system is not a safe place to tell your story oftentimes. And so I think it's an intensely personal decision whether you go to the justice system or whether you do not. If you're interested in more reasons why people don't report their assaults, click any of the links in the description below if you're on YouTube, or one of the sides if you're on Facebook, or just type in the hashtag on Instagram or Twitter or Facebook, WhyIDidn'tReport. You will see so many stories, real stories of real people, why people did not report to the police. There are as many reasons as there are people out there. It's, like I said, an intensely personal decision. Some people never say anything to anyone. Some people say things immediately. It's across the board, and it's people's own decision to make. And just because someone didn't say something immediately does not mean it's not true. That is a fallacy, and that is something that we need to dispel in the media because it's not true. Like I said, it took me 2 weeks to come forward, and there is so much that goes on in your head during that time, and so much that goes into that decision. Thanks for watching, guys. I am Jo Beckwith, and this is Trauma Talk. Let me know what you think of this hashtag, WhyIDidn'tReport. Have you been watching this? Have you participated in it all? What do you think of this movement, and how are you responding to it? Let me know in the comments below. I look forward to talking to you then. Bye, guys.